It was past midnight when Jake Carter stepped out of the dimly lit bar in downtown Chicago. The autumn air was crisp and the streets were nearly deserted. His phone was dead and the last train home had already left. Spotting a lone yellow cab idling at the curb, he sighed in relief and waved it down. The cab pulled up smoothly. The driver, an old man with a gaunt face and piercing, sunken eyes, met his gaze through the rearview mirror. He gave Jake a slow nod. "Where to?" the man asked, his voice gravelly and aged. Jake hesitated for a moment. Something about the driver felt off, but exhaustion won over his instincts. "Henderson Street, near Lincoln Park." The driver nodded and pulled away from the curb. The ride started smoothly, the city lights casting fleeting glows inside the cab. But soon Jake noticed something strange. The streets looked unfamiliar. The usual bustle of late-night traffic had vanished, replaced by eerie silence. I think you missed a turn," Jake said, leaning forward. The driver remained silent. His grip on the wheel was unnervingly tight, knuckles white against his thin, veined hands. Jake swallowed hard. "Hey, man, you hearing me? I said you, The old man turned his head slightly, just enough for Jake to catch his reflection in the mirror. His face, oh God, his face! Shit! His eyes were hollow, sunken deep into dark sockets. His skin looked stretched too tight over his skull, lips barely moving as he whispered, "You're not the first." A wave of cold dread washed over Jake. He grabbed the door handle, locked. He tried the window, stuck. Panic clawed at his throat as the cab picked up speed. The city around him seemed to warp, buildings fading into a thick, creeping fog. The driver chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent shivers through Jake's spine. Many have ridden, none have left. Jake pounded on the window, screaming for help, but the outside world seemed distant, unreal. His breath came in ragged gasps as the cab screeched to a stop. He was thrown forward, cracking his head against the front seat. Dazed, he looked up. The cab was now parked in the middle of a desolate, abandoned lot. No lights, no movement, just an eerie stillness. The driver's seat was empty. The door creaked open on its own. Jake scrambled out, heart hammering. He turned back to the taxi and froze. The vehicle was rusted, covered in grime, its paint peeling away. The number plate was barely visible beneath decades of decay. It looked like it had been sitting there for years. Then on the ground he spotted a newspaper, yellowed, fragile with age. The headline sent ice through his veins. "Taxi driver killed in crash, passenger missing." The date was from 1952. A gust of wind carried a faint, ghostly whisper. Jake turned, and in the cab's reflection, he saw the old man standing right behind him, grinning. The last thing Jake heard before darkness swallowed him whole was the sound of a cab door slamming shut.